Hello, everybody. This is Ernie, and hello, everybody. My name is Ernie, and this is my PE1 research package. So, Boyle Heights is a historic and culturally rich neighborhood in LA. It is located east of downtown, and it is known for its vibrant multicultural history. It's been a melting pot for various types of immigrant communities. Some of these include Jewish, Japanese, Mexican, and more recently, we're starting to see a lot more of that Central American population moving in. This area has always had a strong working class identity. It is very closely associated with the Chicano and Latino culture. So it's also important to understand the city of LA and how it all started from the beginning. So it really all started with the Tongva tribe who occupied the land, which was considered to be some of the most desirable in Southern California. This tribe was some of the wealthiest, most populous, and most influential native groups in the area. In 1542, we see the entering of the Europeans into their world, and they established a total of 21 missions in California. A lot of them were in LA. And also in 1821, Mexico was able to gain its independence from the Spanish Empire, and the Mexican government took control of LA and essentially sold a lot of this mission land to some of the rich ranchers in the area. Later on, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo ended the Mexican War and drew the boundary between the U.S. and Mexico at the Rio Grande and the Gila River. So as a result, the United States received quite a lot of land, including Arizona, California, Western Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, Texas, and Utah from Mexico. And then just some takeaways from some of the early history of LA. It's has a history of violence and racial tension. And in order to successfully address these issues related to safety, I believe from my research that every project should make sure that each side is well lit and that any project that's coming into a community that is known for its crime, it's able to bring that, that vibrancy and that livelihood that can really bring life back into a community. LA also has a curbside trash recycling project in order to successfully address issues related to waste and trash. Every project has to ensure that recycling or some sort of um, waste management is in place in order to reduce waste. LA also has limited water resources. So in order to successfully address this issue, every project should make sure that sustainable plumbing fixtures are installed, as well as the use of other types of sustainable strategies that can really help to address this issue. LA has limited, sorry, LA has a housing crisis. So in order to successfully address this issue, every project should maximize the space and make most of the space as much as they can. And then shifting now into the neighborhood of Boyle Heights, from its beginnings, this was sort of founded by Andrew Boyle in 1858. He was the first Anglo to settle east of LA River, establishing his home in what today is known as Boyle Heights. Like his son-in-law, William Workman, pushed to build infrastructure, building to Boyle Heights into the modern era. And some of the early culture of Boyle Heights, so it's one of the only communities in LA that didn't have restrictive covenants historically. So this meant that it was very welcoming, quote unquote, to a lot of different people of color and different ethnicities and minorities that were not welcome in some of the other neighborhoods of the city. So as a result, it was inhabited by Jewish, Mexican, Japanese immigrants, as well as Yugoslavian, Armenian, African American, and Russian people. We started to see a decline in diversity in this neighborhood as it was redlined by local banks, deeming it to be hazardous to investors. So banks were giving out loans to buy property in this neighborhood, and as a result, a lot of the diversity started to leave the neighborhood. Franklin Roosevelt signed an executive order leading to the mass incarceration of the Japanese Americans. This happened after the war. So as a result, a lot of that Japanese population started to decline. And then this kind of illustrates some of the decline in diversity. So we see that Black, Jewish, and Japanese communities started to move away from Boyle Heights in great numbers. And also the freeway boom led to displacement of 50,000 more Boyle Heights residents. So this kind of shows us what a difference it's been since 1940 all the way to 2000, where it used to be a lot of white, non-Hispanic people, and now we see mostly Hispanic people in this neighborhood. Some of the current culture. So we still see some of the remnants of the unique melting pot this neighborhood once was. And we still see a lot of those iconic buildings like the Japanese Hospital, the Breed Street Shoal, and the Evergreen Cemetery. A little more of today's culture. It has one of the highest concentrations of Latino residents in the city, mostly Mexican resident. So this has continued to grow with many cultural events taking place in this neighborhood, and also many famous landmarks of the Mexican culture, such as the Mariachi Plaza housing development. So to counter the threat of displacement due to rising rents, there have been efforts to build and maintain affordable housing units. These projects aim to provide low-income residents with housing options that allow them to remain in the neighborhood. So here's an example of 110 Southwell Avenue, which is a new 5-story building that it will feature 44 studios, 1-bedroom apartments, as well as 2-bedroom apartments with very low and extremely low, for very low and extremely low income households. So this is a great example of the type of developments that we're starting to see in this area, and how we're starting to see a lot of these efforts, to bring livelihood to the neighborhood with these new developments, but also make sure that they are affordable and that people that are already in these neighborhoods can stay in these neighborhoods and not have to go somewhere else. Transit development, so the extension of the Metro Gold Line has increased connectivity between Boyle Heights and other parts of LA. This has made the area more accessible and potentially increasing in property values. So obviously, being able to be accessible to other parts of the city makes this a very desirable neighborhood. And that public transit, obviously increased its value. So some more commercial development, with increased attention on the Boyle Heights neighborhood, there has been a growing of new businesses, including cafes, restaurants, and retails. While some of these cater to the existing communities, others are aimed at attracting new and more affluent customers. So this is something that we see with gentrification. And again, the effort of these low cost housing options are, to kind of keep those already existing people, and not have to like drive them away due to the increased cost of property in this neighborhood. So residential occupancy, there are about 83,000 residents with a median age of 31 years. The population is 49% male and 50% female. U.S. born residents make up 57% of this community, while 15% are non-U.S. born residents and 26% are non-residents. Single-family homes are in predominantly smaller buildings, usually in bungalow styles, and multi-family homes are duplexes, housing projects, and apartment buildings. Boyle House is an area that is considered to be in high need of parks. For every 1,000 residents, there are 1.7 acres of public recreation to use. And the city of LA, there are 3.3 acres of public recreation for every 1,000 residents. So clearly, this area is in need of green areas and parks. And I think that's something that is very important to keep in mind when designing for this project. So another thing that we see a lot in this neighborhood are the murals and the street art. These work to reflect some of the community's identity, pride, and history. So we see a lot of neighborhoods that represent that Latin Mexican American culture. And we also see a lot of community preservation efforts in order to conserve the community assets and try to fight those gentrification efforts. Regional housing and residential typologies in Boyle Heights. So according to the demographic profile of Boyle Heights, among the total 24,000 dwelling units in Boyle Heights, 62% units were considered multiple housing units, while 37% units were considered single housing units. So this kind of gives us a perspective that most of the housing in Boyle Heights is of multiple housing nature, and there's not as much single housing units in this neighborhood. Zoning, so data tells us that nearly 30% of the land in Boyle Heights is zoned for or built as a multi-unit residential, whereas 70% of LA County is planned for single family zoning. This shows that the neighborhood is seeking to develop in a way that is more dense and avoids that urban sprawl. And also, we see that the city is planning to propose gradual changes to reduce the proportion of existing multifamily zoning and increase mixed unit zoning. The majority of new housing growth and development is directed away from the existing neighborhoods and towards mixed use corridors and public transportation. So the proposal is intended to alleviate future development pressures on the existing residential neighborhoods while bringing current and future residents closer to commercial amenities and transportation options. Boyle Heights has home ownership rate of only 23% since 2010. It's significantly lower than neighboring communities, and that typically have a home ownership rate of approximately 48%, 53 or 34%. And one of the reasons for this is the median household income in Boyle Heights. It's about 51,000, which is significantly less than the median city of LA household income, which is about 76 grand. Higher income obviously provides those necessary funds to cover monthly expenses, and the residents of Boyle Heights just tend to not have that type of income. So this is an aerial view from our 3D model, and here we kind of see the parts of Boyle Heights that are closer to the potential site of our project. And here we can see a lot of that multifamily housing, and we kind of see the style that it kind of uses, the typology that is used in these neighborhoods, which tends to be more of that courtyard, perimeter block typology. Um, and then the rest, a lot of it's zone commercial, and it's typically for residential warehouses or commercial um, purposes. Here we have this isometric view of the neighborhood. Here's where we see that housing, which is mostly multifamily residential units, very little single family units. Here we kind of see some of the what's around the area, what type of buildings we have. Surprisingly, we have a lot of businesses that are in the creative fields. We see a lot of art studios, art galleries, recording studios, fashion studios, architectural studios, film studios. We also see wholesale suppliers. We see a little bit of retail and not too much restaurant in the area. A little bit of the culture nowadays in this neighborhood, a lot of Hispanic culture, and a lot of culture that revolves around that creative field, creative industry, slash industrial. And, through the research done in these earlier phases, we can kind of see and get a better understanding of the type of site that we are dealing with, the type of needs that it has, and the type of potential occupants that we see. And what we really get out of this research is that this is an area that desperately needs low income housing because the residents of this neighborhood don't make enough money to own their own homes. So we need to provide something that is affordable to them, but also something that is of quality and just really brings life to the neighborhood, to a neighborhood that is, has been underserved for so long, doesn't have enough parks. We need to make sure that we're bringing in a lot of green spaces and amenities that these occupants can really take advantage of and just improve their overall quality of life. There's obviously proximity to big roads and bridges that can bring a lot of noise pollution into our side. So it's important to make sure that we're using the appropriate strategies to mitigate that. Um, and I think the big focus here is just making sure that we're designing something that is affordable, but it's not just cheap, that it's affordable, but also has a lot of life to it and longevity for its occupants. That's kind of what I gathered from my research. Thank you.